Texas authorities have started arresting migrants at a public park in Eagle Pass, Texas, near the U.S. Mexico border. The Department of Homeland Security wanted state officials to leave the park by Wednesday. The area was being used by Border Patrol to hold and inspect migrants who had illegally crossed into the country. This now sets up a legal battle between the state of Texas and the Biden administration over the country's immigration policies. Joining us now is CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang outside of the White House. So Weijia, talk to us about how the White House is responding to the situation in Texas.
Well, the Department of Homeland Security had sent a cease and desist letter to the state of Texas, to its attorney general, to say that they had until yesterday to stop blocking access to the border. And in response to that, the attorney general, Ken Paxton, essentially said no and sent a very defiant letter back to the administration to say that they are doing everything within their legal right to do. And frankly, they set up even more wires in that area, which have been controversial before. And so, as you mentioned, this does set up a legal fight, because in that cease and desist letter, the Department of Homeland Security said that if you fail to comply, they would then go to the Department of Justice to see what appropriate action should be taken. Now, since this response from Texas, the White House has not weighed in yet. But, there's at least one congressman from Texas who is calling on the president to federalize the Texas National Guard there, to use his executive powers to do that. And yesterday during the briefing, I asked whether that was a possibility, and they said they didn't know if it was even a legal possibility, but that was not on the table as an option, that they were going to use the Department of Justice to try to get at this. But, if it's going to go at that route, Lana, it could take some time. And in the meantime, Border Patrol agents don't have access to that part of the border.
Speaking of the White House weighing in on things, the president commented on our top story today, which is the DOJ report on Uvalde. Tell us what he said and what your sources in the White House have to say about it.
That's right. He said that he had not read the report yet, and that he wasn't sure if there should be any criminal liability. Of course, he wanted to be very cautious about this since he wasn't able yet to read through that. But we imagine that after he's more read in on that, in addition to the remarks that you guys played from the Attorney General, that perhaps he would be more forceful in expressing what he thinks should be done, not only in response to Uvalde, but how to prevent something like this from happening in the future. Now, in his statement about Uvalde, though, he did once again call for Congress to work on common sense gun laws, to have gun reform, which, of course, is an ongoing debate that we will continue to cover.
And Weijia, the president is busy campaigning today. We've learned that he's shifting his campaign's approach to include a greater focus on abortion rights. Talk to us about what's driving that decision.
That's right. Our chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cortez, along with our political unit, broke this story last night. And it is relevant, Lana, because it shows where the campaign is in terms of their strategy. And we know there's going to be a heavy focus on abortion and reproductive rights. So on Tuesday, during the New Hampshire primary for Republicans, the president and the vice president and their spouses will be holding their very first joint campaign rally, and that's going to be in Northern Virginia. And the centerpiece of that is going to be about abortion. And they're expected to not only talk about where they stand on this issue, but to remind voters the former president's role in eliminating federal reproductive rights for women. Of course, he did appoint 3 Supreme Court justices that ultimately had a part in that position. And so, as we have been seeing in other local and state races, abortion is such a big issue, and that is precisely why Democratic strategists wanted the president to really lean into it, and that's exactly what he will be doing for a very significant campaign rally next week.
All right, Weijia Jiang, thank you.
Sure.